morning, everybody. My name is Chiara Farronato, and I'm going to talk about peaches today. We all love peaches. At least we love them more than lemons. If I were to offer you a peach, you would probably say yes. But what if I were to offer you whatever fruit is contained in this bag, and you had to eat it regardless of whether it was a peach or a lemon? Would you still say yes? This is the famous lemons market problem, for which George Akerlof won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2001. When consumers don't know the quality of a good or of a service, buyers don't trust sellers, and sellers don't have any incentives to invest in high-quality products. To protect consumers from risky transactions and low quality, regulation has often been the solution historically. Occupational licensing, certifications, health and safety inspections have been put in place with the purpose of guaranteeing some minimum standards of quality, or at least provide consumers with information about the quality of different service providers. For example, occupational licensing now covers over 25% of the US labor force, up from 5% in the 1950s. In recent years, technology has facilitated the diffusion of online rating mechanisms. TripAdvisor rates hotels and tourist attractions, Yelp reviews restaurants and local services, and a whole new set of peer-to-peer marketplaces design online review systems to ensure trust on their platform. Now, a fundamental question is whether consumer protection still justifies the existing level of regulation that industries that are being disrupted by these new online peer-to-peer marketplaces is still worth it, or whether online review systems can partially substitute for it. Why should we care about this? Well, online peer-to-peer marketplaces like Uber and Airbnb have been disrupting industries that have been historically highly regulated. It's very expensive or very hard to get a taxi license, but it's very easy to become a paid driver on Uber and Lyft. If you actually talk to a representative of the taxi industry, or Ben, they would say that the whole premise of these new businesses is avoiding regulation. Let's think about what the value of online review mechanisms can add to improve information about the quality that service providers intrinsically have. So online reviews aggregate information about past experiences that consumers have to inform future experiences. In a sense, it's the wisdom of the crowd as opposed to the expert eye of the regulator. But the platform has two important roles to play in this. It first has to collect information. It has to convince consumers to share information about their past experience. And then it has to aggregate and summarize this so that it is useful for future transactions. In the information gathering stage, there's at least two issues that platforms should be aware of. Not every customer submits reviews. Research has shown that customers with a positive experience are much more likely to leave reviews. And if customers actually meet service providers, they are even less likely to leave negative reviews. When they are worried about retaliation by the service providers, the bias is even worse. And the second issue is that providers have many incentives to manipulate their reviews. For example, by offering discounts on future transactions, or by writing fake reviews about their business or their competitors. How can platforms adjust for these biases? Well, one possible way in simultaneous review systems is the simultaneous reveal of the reviews that buyers submit for sellers and sellers submit for buyers. Another distinction is the distinction between visible feedback, feedback that is visible and personalized, versus private feedback or anonymous feedback, feedback that is only visible to the platform. In the information aggregation stage, the platform has to choose how much aggregating information and how much to incorporate these information into their search and matching mechanisms. Aggregate ratings can be too coarse of a measure of quality, and individual ratings can be too long to read, and so consumers inevitably focus on a potentially misleading subset of them. In particular, then, if quality changes over time, or if some reviews are more important than others, aggregation needs to take these into account. As an example, I want to show you the seller feedback score on eBay, which measures the number of positive ratings out of all ratings. And I want you to pay attention to the x-axis. It starts at 98% positive rating. So if on an absolute scale, 98% sounds like an amazing rating, on eBay, that puts you on the bottom of the distribution of the quality. But all of a sudden, if you're able to incorporate the fact that some buyers decided not to rate sellers from which they purchased items, all of a sudden the distribution becomes a much more dispersed distribution of quality. Actually, a distribution of quality that predicts customer retention. So in designing these online mechanisms, the platform is really squeezed between the two sides of the market. And it has to not only please both sides of the market, but it has to please subgroups in these sides of the market. On one side, it needs to reward sellers, existing service providers for quality, but it also has to guarantee low barriers to entry for new service providers. On the side of consumers, it needs to focus on service quality, but also eliminating irrelevant or redundant information. So I think one of the important things, though, that we should all recognize is that even if this is very challenging, platforms have strong incentives to self-regulate, at least because they want to avoid a total market breakdown. And they do so with a mix of screening devices, background checks, online reviews, and insurance. Technology has probably shifted the optimal mode of regulation away from traditional ex-ante occupational licensing and certification regulations, and more in favor of data gathering to correct abuses quickly. But the extent to which we can convince regulators that this is a good substitute for guaranteeing quality services depends first on the visibility of risks to consumers, and second, on the effort that the platforms make in aggregating and distributing relevant and exhaustive information about the quality of the service. Thank you.